They show $1.8 trillion in transactions for local government.
And that's nationwide.
No, that was the state of Texas.
State of Texas.
1.8 trillion.
Why? I've got some of the past years. This is the last one that's out in '99. Why are the reports getting smaller and smaller now that you've been exposing them? And how do we get that other information that they're now cutting out of them?
You have to look at a prior year's comprehensive annual financial report and see where certain areas all of a sudden get clipped or disappear in their entirety. And then you have a lead list to say what happened to these funds, where can I see the accounting?
And that's all because a successful commodities trader and financial advisor in New Jersey found out that the whole thing is a giant stinking fraud 10 years ago and started talking about it 3 years ago and made a documentary film and has done hundreds of radio interviews. Now, suddenly, I remember years ago, Walter, you could call and get one of these pretty quick. Sometimes they'll give the runaround. You have had a massive effect on others by talking about this ad. We need to keep pushing viewers. We're talking about budgets. We're talking about comprehensive annual financial reports. You're saying boring. Walter, recapping before we talk about the solutions. For people that have just joined us, explain the difference between budget, and how that's drilled into our head, and the comprehensive annual financial report.
Well, the beautiful point...
Explain the fraud to people, why this is the biggest game in town.
The beautiful point here is that being that the government, for the last, since 1945, created this structure to take over the wealth, and they were successful. They have done it. So we're talking $60 trillion in composite liquid investment wealth held by federal and local governments. That's a phenomenal increase in 30 years. Now, on the composite government pension funds, they generated $4.3 trillion last year. Total taxation in this country in 1999 was approximately $3.6 trillion, federal and local governments. So composite government pension funds generated substantially over total forced taxation in this country. Now, can anyone see, with simple administrative action, restructuring composite government through consolidation of the surpluses into an annuity pension fund set up for the resident property owners and taxpayers, sale of venture and enterprise projects, which government now owns, but they shouldn't, like golf courses, amusement parks, real estate ventures.
Hotels.
Sell it back to the private sector where it belongs. That generates a phenomenal amount of revenue for consolidation into the annuity pension fund. And where overgrowth took place, downsizing, because they're collecting the money to pay for that excessive growth. So with downsizing, that revenue becomes available for allocation into the annuity pension fund set up for the resident property.
Yeah, we're about to get to that. The solution is $60 trillion in investments and cream and private that just keeps rolling. They've got 70% of the stock market. That is governments, state, local, federal. They're militarizing the police against us, treating us like slaves, squeezing us, saying they need more when they basically already own everything. Even your mortgage is predominantly owned by government interest.
I like to use one example, Alex, which is very simple and very basic, but 100% true. If every one of your listeners had an 11 and 12-year-old boy, and they gave him carte blanche to write their own allowance check each week, and you made $1,200 a week, within no time, they'd be cutting a check for $1,000 a week. And if you told them you're going to cut them back to $800 a week, they'd kick, they'd scream, they'd holler, they'd use any logic available to them to justify how an 11 and 12-year-old boy could not survive on $800 a week. There is no difference here whatsoever. You just have bigger boys and sharper players.
But recapping for those that are just joining us, and I know you've gone over this 1,000 times, Walter, the difference between the budget that we always hear about in the press and this big secret, the comprehensive annual financial report that all the media and everybody else, the corporations, know full well about because the government is their owners.
Well, the bottom line is the budget is strictly annual operating expenses, what they're going to spend for the year and what they're going to bring in for the year.
So all of the losses are there?
The expenses for operating government and what they're going to tally and tax the public to perform these functions.
And people think that the budget is the whole financial universe of government and private industry, but in truth, it is the comprehensive annual financial report. Isn't the second set of books, it is the books.
Correct. The comprehensive annual financial report will show the budget. They call it the general purpose fund, and it'll show everything else, all other income, the investments that have built up over decades and decades, the net worth of that government. You know, if you lost your job today, Alex, okay, how are you going to pay for your budget, for your house?
Well, I'd have to work for another radio network.
No, you couldn't get a job. You were disabled. If you had an investment fund, say built up over the last 20 years, equal to $1 million.
Well, see, I'm not like the government and these private corporations that work together. I'm not out there with cops squeezing people for money and taxing the daylights out of folks and all of this. I don't have any money.
I did a little logistical survey, even in my own hometown here in Prescott. I looked at taxes, fines, and fees levied against the public in traffic fines via population 20 years ago versus today. 600% increase per population. It's a revenue-generating venture. I mean, if you could pull people over and clip them for $100 any day of the week, you become a millionaire overnight, correct, Alex?
Yeah. And you hire the cop. Well, hold on. You hire the cop. Now they're only hiring cops with low IQs. That's even been in the news. You hire a cop that'll go out. You pay 30-something grand a year. He generates you $1 million. And you just expand and hire more cops. You got the people begging for more cops for some reason when we got more than we ever needed. The number of cops has doubled in the last 8 years. The number of prisons has doubled. The prison population has doubled. People are still begging for more, begging for more, begging for more. Government owns everything. They're expanding.
I go back to, you now know why Gorbachev went Democratic.
Talking about these empires, these water districts, these city councils, these county commissioners, how do the politicians and the minions running these little empires, how do they themselves profit out of this scam?
I'll give you an example from Arizona, Yavapai County. There was a border supervisor, a guy by the name of Feldmeyer, came into office about 9 years ago with a disclosed net worth of about $85,000. He's currently up to over $8 million 10 years later. He made most of his money on land transactions. His latest venture, he bought about 1,600 acres in Prescott Valley. After he buys the property, it was a ranch land with one access road on one side, another access road on the other side, but nothing connecting. And 1 year later, the most beautiful access road goes right through the property. Now, the county fairgrounds and racetrack, which was built 100 years ago, which was too small to handle the need for services, they had to move. Guess where they're going to move? Right next door to his property. Guess what's going up on his property? To the new golf course and condominium complex. Where's the money coming from? The county bank, run by the boys. They'll pull out $5 to $7 million on that venture alone.
And that's just one little county out of hundreds of counties in this country.
And there were a lot of people complaining about him, so there were two groups that started a recall petition against him. And they were the regular, public tax protest groups, and they were slowly getting signatures for a recall. He gets his best friends to start a third recall petition against himself. They immediately get all the signatures required, being that they're well networked, and complete the signature requirement. And then they go to the Superior Court judge, his best friend. I'm an elected official. I can't have 3 recall petitions against me at the same time. You're going to have to invalidate 2 of them. Guess which 2 they invalidated? The citizens' recall petition. The third one started off by his friends. Guess what happened to that?
Got dropped.
Dropped, correct. The game is absolute, and we're talking millions of dollars. It's not the Joe's six-pack crowd betting $5 on the football game, who's going to win on Dallas. These guys have worked hard to build their little empires. You know, if you went to a cocaine dealer and said, I heard you were dealing $5 million of cocaine this year. Is that true? Oh, you're crazy. I've never even touched this stuff. I don't even know what it looks like. You know? They're going to perpetuate their game. There's a lot of money involved here.
And you talked about how using the Orange County debacle, the feds have now streamlined and make the counties and cities and school districts and water districts funnel their money through their gates. How does that feed into this?
Well, the largest investment pool was the pension funds. And back in 1981, the Fed sent out a transmittal letter to the local governments. But by the way, there's 85,000 separate corporations in local government.